back to the Noise Filter podcast. This week we have Pete. Hello, Pete. How you doing? You all right?
I'm all right.
Excellent. Could you just describe for the viewers what you do and what your sound is all about?
Yeah, I'm Pete. I'm from Cambridge, and I have been going for donkey's years as a solo performer who makes kind of weird, small, little collagey pop songs that don't really conform to the usual kind of first chorus stuff. And I sort of perform over backing tapes of these live. Generally, that's what I do.
So, how long have you been doing that for? Has that been going for a long time, or?
Yep, probably about 20 years.
Okay,
I'd say so. Yeah.
How has your sound sort of evolved over the time?
Well, it has evolved, I suppose. It's still pretty kind of raw, I would say. I'm not sort of trying to achieve some kind of classic sound or something, and it's pretty sort of when I say collagey, I suppose I kind of are trying to establish a basic groove, whether it is, it could be drum machines and synths or something, but it could be just field recordings and me playing the bass badly or something.
Yeah.
And then I suppose I just sort of find some sort of setting or found it, and then I kind of like try and work that a little bit more into a song. That doesn't really explain it very well, does it? But yeah. Yeah, well, I was just talking about the evolution of my sound. You've thrown me a bit there, because I don't know if it has evolved that much. It's still the same sort of quite amateurish. Within the amateurishness, there's probably an evolution of methods, I suppose. I suppose I've learned a lot in the last few years, because I kind of weirdly, for somebody who's a bit non-technical, I've got into modular synths, which kind of it is quite technical in some ways, but I think for years I've basically been somebody who experiments with sound and home recording by just, if I've got a drum machine, I record that, and then I kind of overdub something else on the top. But getting into kind of modular made me kind of understand a lot about kind of how MIDI works, bizarrely, even though modular is MIDI, and just how kind of what is a synth?
Yeah.
What is it trying to do? You have an oscillator and so on. I didn't really kind of appreciate all these things. So I've got actually I'm a bit more like I suppose a kind of, not a proper musician, but a proper musician in the kind of, maybe a kind of 90s dance music sense or something. I kind of understand, I've got patch bays and stuff now, whereas I didn't before.
Yeah.
But it's still basically just, make a few weird sounds and kind of make them rub up against each other, and then kind of after that there's a process of like kind of to maybe a bit more of partly a song, but also just a sort of a piece, I suppose, a kind of a little weird story painting kind of thing that isn't really music as you might typically understand it.
Yeah. I think music can encompass everything, can't it? It can be such a broad spectrum of ideas that, there's no right or wrong answers, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? We have this vast sea of people doing all kinds of different things, and that is a beautiful tapestry, and that's kind of what I like about, having sort of spoke to Ben, and then, your music journey kind of changes and evolves, and your understanding of what music can be changes and evolves, and it's important to kind of keep that in mind when you do something a bit different.
Yeah.
So when you're writing songs, how do you sort of do that process? Is it And I suspect it's probably somewhere in the middle. But is it like a sit in the studio and kind of layer up stuff and build ideas, or is it with the live thing in mind? Are you kind of keeping that like for Ben, he has to very, very carefully think about how am I going to do this live? I'm going to have to like have all these things happen. How does that work for you?
Well, I mean, I make life easy for myself, perhaps too easy for myself in a sense, in that I ultimately I'm going to be performing. I'm singing. Like people who know what I do jokingly call it singing over tapes, which of course it's not that much of a joke. It's essentially what it is. But so I don't have to worry that I'm going to be able to play it or have two things going on at once. It's just going to be a mini disc playing everything. It's just me and I even cheat to the extent in which I'll have my vocals on the tape as well. So I'm basically doing the kind of lead vocal, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I don't really think about when I make music. I don't really make it with a live performance. I make tons and tons of music, most of which is probably not very good. But like I just do it as a, it's my hobby as well as anything else. It's something I do kind of every day. So I produce like a lot of stuff. I have to force myself to kind of turn things into the kind of finished piece that can be performed live. So and I suppose as well, I don't if I do something that only ends up being an instrumental and then that doesn't matter. I don't do stuff with the idea of performing it. I kind of in some ways I wish the stuff that I do live is just like this tiny percentage of what I do. So I wish it was, I wish I could perform everything live, but I probably produce too much stuff, really.
That's a good position to be in, isn't it?
I guess, yeah.
A lot of people I've spoke to, one of the questions I always ask is like, how do you deal with writer's block? And do you suffer from it? And I suspect you're probably at the other end, aren't you?
Yeah, it's I think I need to be blocked a bit more, but I do struggle with, like, I've been trying to kind of make a kind of stuff to have as an album, and I do need to follow things through and make songs into, or make pieces into songs, and then do lyrics and stuff, and that is difficult. I find it's very fun to play around with recording and playing and so on, and I'll happily do that every single day, but to try and get into the kind of like, let me write something, lyrics that I'd be happy to sing in front of people that actually are I can live with, sort of thing. That is so I wouldn't say it's block, it's just bloody hard, really.
Lyrically, what inspires your choices? In fact, Ben had a question. He said he's noticed a fair amount of biblical references in some of your tunes. He wanted to know, where does that come from?
It's not because I'm an evangelist or something. It's I suppose it's just maybe just writing, you just end up using kind of classical references or something, just because all these, I suppose maybe you get them stuck in the back of your brain because of school and stuff, and I did something recently that references like David and Goliath or something, and it's like, it's not I suppose it's just it's just something you kind of like instinctively kind of reach for when you're trying to talk about something or whatever. And plus I suppose it never hurts to have like if it's in the back of your brain, it's going to be in the back of somebody else's brain, so it's sort of it's a ready, available kind of way of expressing things, I suppose. Maybe it just sounds heavy as well,
it's got some gravitas to it.
Reggae or something, when they start talking about Solomon or whatever. It's yeah. Sounds good. It sounds the words sound good.
Yeah.
You know.
What apart from that, what are your sort of lyrical influences? How do you what are your sort of go-tos?
I don't know too much about having lyrical influences. I suppose I quite maybe kind of like kind of writing methodologies or something. I suppose, like, you know, I really like, say, for instance, Brian Eno's first album. You know, you can just tell that's sort of somebody who's not trying to rhyme moon in June or whatever. There's sort of I don't know, kind of have an experimental approach, but not just for its own sake, just to sort of just having fun with words, I suppose, and the sound of words. Yeah, I mean, I suppose you know, if you start worry too much about trying to sound like somebody, then you're probably on the wrong path. I think I just kind of like. I think in some ways the hardest thing with lyrics is to sort of let stuff kind of come out, rather than, like, I'm very guilty, I think, of trying to say kind of deep things, or to express the pain of being human or something, and sometimes it's just, you know, you're better off kind of saying it obliquely somehow or whatever. Or saying, or having something that's a bit more ambiguous or something. But essentially, I don't really, you know, it's not as though these things happen consciously. I think a lot of times when you're writing, you don't, you know, you kind of, and I do. I'm lazy, and I'm trying to write lyrics to finish a song.
Yeah.
And it's tedious to try and like get, you know, you might have done 2 verses and you're just thinking, you know, where am I kind of going with this? And you just, you know, you end up kind of going through the motions a bit, or the song kind of just happens in its. You might have one verse that you're quite proud of because it's really expressing something in quite a good way, and then the other, or I'll often start with something that is literally the first. I'm quite a believer in creativity being something that you kind of as a process of continually making something up on the spot, sort of thing. So if you start with something that's just a random phrase that just sounds, that's just, you know, it's the first thing that you think of, and then if you can kind of like use that as your starting point, and then gradually kind of curl it into making sense or being about something, and then a lot of times I'll do you know, the lyrics for a song will start off as something like that, and then it will gradually I'll just be able to sort of pile more and more things on that original phrase until it actually makes sense in terms of the rest of the song.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that, really. It's not. Yeah. I don't. You know, I think I'd struggle if I was like, right, I'm gonna write about you know, poverty or something today. Although I probably do that, I suppose, kind of inevitably.
It's hard. I think, like, being very focused and making something with the intention of making it is very difficult. It's very hard to kind of come at something and go, I'm going to write this about this, and it's going to be this whole thing. And I find that concept for me really hard to do. And I'm kind of glad what you said, because I actually have a very similar approach myself. It's kind of I uncover. I'm almost like an archaeologist, and I'm uncovering something that was there.
Yeah.
Rather than making it.
Yeah, I think that's good. Really, I don't really like the idea of having a fully formed thing and then kind of doing it. I think you've almost broken it before you've started with that, I guess.
What things influence? What things influenced you and started your journey, and what things influence you now and kind of keep you inventing stuff?
Would you mean like what things kind of musically, or what other
Yeah, and whatever. Actually, to be honest.
Well, that's a good question, I suppose. I mean, my partner trained as a psychotherapist, and so to some extent I live in the world of kind of thinking about what who we are and why we do what we do, or something, or what if we're doing something that doesn't, but we're not happy or whatever. So I suppose at some point inevitably I was kind of thinking, why do I, if I'm quite a sort of reserved person in I'm quite shy as a child and stuff, why do I think it's a good idea to get up on stage in front of a crowd and do all this? And I think there's probably no easy answer to that, or I think maybe on some level, I suppose it's a maybe it's a reaction to being kind of maybe it's a sort of a version of yourself that you think that is a better version, or is sort of maybe we're just where people are listening to you, or something. So I suppose that there's a bit of that. I've definitely in the past, I don't know, maybe 15 years or so. Actually, if I say I've been going 20 years and I talk about the past 15 years, but I guess it's it sounds funny if I say that. But I guess I've had less desire to turn it into something that is like a career or a destiny. It's, to me, it's kind of more, I feel kind of like it's something that I like doing, that I enjoy, that kind of, it puts me in the right place in life, I suppose. It means that the people I know are people like me, or something. I think that's that is a very good reason to do music, and I think it's easy when you start doing it to kind of get hung up on. You've got to understand that I would say this because I'm not like a famous, rock musician or whatever. But I think I think there's reason to do it without it turning into some kind of paycheck or whatever. So there's that side.
Yeah.
As to why I do what I do, I suppose. And also I'm just a music. Music for me, I suppose, is a real. I think, and for a lot of people, musicians, it was the thing that it was their sort of escape from sort of all the things that they didn't like or whatever, or it's a kind of it's something that kind of gets under your skin somehow. And so I suppose maybe I just started to kind of live in that. The world where music is a kind of an alternative reality there, or something, which I think people who don't make music kind of struggle to understand a bit. But so I guess I wanted to make music myself because it seemed like these musicians, or kind of record were kind of these kind of magical, religious texts or whatever, kind of thing, and you wanted to express yourself in similar ways or something. So I suppose, we're getting a bit vague here, but
so what musically inspired you? What was the thing that was your starting point that got you kind of going to get into this?
I suppose I'm old enough. I was going to say I'm lucky enough to be old enough to, as a non-musician, I remember the kind of the birth of the sampler and so on, and I and the first records that came out that were sampled from other records and so on, and to me it was like, it was kind of a quite revelatory that I suppose that, because I suppose I did want to be, I wanted to be to be honest, I really kind of probably wanted to be, a proper pop star or whatever. And I was young enough at the time to believe that was a something that I'd want to do. But at the same time, I was kind of neither confident enough or kind of motivated enough to actually learn how to play the guitar or whatever. Suddenly this magic machine came along, and I thought, like, maybe I could. So there was I suppose I thought, even knowing that there was a sampler out there made me kind of like kick back for a few years and think like, oh yeah, it's all sorted. I'll just get one of these things eventually. But it's not quite. It's even now that they're commonplace and you can kind of sample things on your phone and the rest of it, it's not as easy as all that. And then I suppose the other thing that kind of inspired me were people who didn't. People who were kind of lo-fi, I suppose, or people who just sort of made strange music, maybe either on their own or in their own bedroom or whatever. Probably, I remember kind of a lot of 90s people like Sebado and stuff like that, kind of indie experimental kind of rock. That, and also definitely Alistair Galbraith, New Zealand musician. Just these very sort of beautiful little sketchy kind of homemade kind of songs and stuff. So I sort of thought like that gave me kind of permission to want to do music as well. So somewhere between, I suppose that's probably where I've kind of ended up. It's somewhere between having a sampler and doing a kind of 4-track bedroom recording.
Yeah.
Type thing.
What was the from when you were growing up? What was your background, and how has that helped or hindered you with your music?
Background, as in
a little bit of your backstory.
Well, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, so for one reason or another. I kind of attended several primary schools in England, and then my family moved to Botswana in Southern Africa when I was 8.
Wow.
And then I spent like two and a half years in one place, and then boarding school back here for a couple of years, and then went back out to Africa a couple more years, and then so by the time I came back when I was about 16 and a half or something. So I never really spent more than 2.5 years in any kind of school or anything. So I think maybe that has contributed to my sort of slight, reserve or whatever. I tend to it takes me a long time to kind of like, I tend to listen to what other people are saying rather than kind of, so I think maybe that's got something to do with it.
Yeah. It's quite a good way to be, though, isn't it? I think it's nice to be the sort of person that's kind of listening rather than be the person who's always kind of. I'm the opposite way around. I'm very rarely listening. I'm always chatting.
Well, that's good too. I mean, people are quite suspicious of us quiet types sometimes. They people will often be like, "What's going on? You haven't said anything yet." You'd. Yeah.
I think it's because the rest of us, we feel like there's some plan or something going on, some ulterior motive. I tend to use conversation as a means to get rid of the uncomfortable feeling of silence. So,
well, you're in the right job.
Yeah. So, over the years, I'm assuming you've done some albums. How do you pick tunes to make an album experience? Are you fussed about having that continuity? I mean, you sort of said about it earlier, but is that like the idea of like collecting some songs and making them the thing that people can sort of say this is what you do? How do you do that?
Well, I always say that every album is a compilation, which I think has pretty much always been the case, in that I just generally have picked the best, I hope, bunch of songs out of the hundreds that I've got lying about.
Yeah.
And sometimes there will be songs that are, a few years older than, like I think there's an album that I did, I guess in, I don't know, 2009 or something, and that probably had something on it from like 1996 or something on it. Although I think all the subsequent ones have been a bit more from a period. So obviously, sometimes I try and hang or a kind of vague concept on the album, or give it a kind of feel, or songs that kind of seem to fit together. But mainly I'm just trying to make sure there aren't any shit ones on there, really. The one that I'm doing at the moment, I wanted it to be, I think I'm a bit too relaxed about kind of, having, like, people, get very serious about making a record, don't they? And they want it to be sequenced right, so all the tracks going to go well into one another, and they want it to maybe even have a theme or a particular sound. It sounds like it's come from this place, or it's in this tradition or whatever. But I've been much more sort of just happy to just jumble things. I suppose I like, my kind of aesthetic is a kind of a bunch of disparate things that are sort of chucked together in a kind of haphazard way. It's a sort of, it's just what I like. I like a kind of busyness rather than, I'm not into kind of purity and so on. I like rough edges and things like that. But having said that, the latest record, I did want it to sound a bit more, or a bit, maybe just to sort of represent, maybe to just sort of feel a bit new and a bit different than the last stuff. But I'm not sure that it's actually going to. I think it's just going to sound like me, and everyone's going to be like, yeah, that's just the same stuff you always do.
It's hard. I mean, it's hard to kind of, as a musician, it is hard to evolve and change. And yet we all do it, probably unconsciously, and move forwards in weird ways that you maybe don't necessarily notice. It's hard to sort of see the little changes, isn't it? But I suspect that even, subconsciously you are changing and evolving, and there's like some evolution even to your process and stuff. In the studio, how do you kind of put together, how does that work for you, recording wise? How do you do that? What sort of software do you use, and how do you get started?
I use a whole range of things, I suppose. I'm a bit of for somebody who doesn't understand gear, I've definitely got enough gear. Partly I think from just picking things up. I'm quite a sort of hoarder, and I've always gone to jumble sales and secondhand shops and stuff, and so I've got a lot of sort of drum machines and synthesizers, and I suppose I started using audio software back when it was pretty new, so and with Modular as well, has been, as I was sort of saying, it's a, you can get your computer to talk to your Modular and vice versa, and then you can, if you've got your computer talking to your Modular, you can get it to talk to other MIDI gear, and then you can kind of compose everything, plug everything in together and get it to talk to one another. So I suppose it's a real, I've got so much choice in the way that I can make sounds, but even so, I essentially basically do the same thing, which is just sort of just make a sound, and then I think some people get, people that do kind of electronic music or whatever, they they spend an hour getting their kick drum sound right or whatever, and that's great. But I've always just been this person that just hears a sound and just kind of is pretty much happy with it. So I kind of usually just, I don't know. I mean, the other good thing about Modular is it's just a sort of Lego for sound, really. You can plug anything into anything, and it's just got this kind of it's a real hands-on, inviting thing to experiment with sound. So I just kind of get a groove going, I suppose, even if it's not a very pleasant groove, and then I just try and make sure it varies enough so it gets interesting, and then I kind of record it into my computer, and then start overdubbing things, whether that's me or playing live instruments or whatever, and then I just kind of chop things up and sculpt it into a thing, and then hopefully end up putting vocals on the top to it. And then there's just a lot of kind of making sure that things aren't too loud or toppy or or whatever. So that's the typical thing, I would say, that I do.
And Ben wanted to know, what sort of software do you use when you do that?
I generally use Reaper at the moment, which Ben actually recommended when I had my last computer catastrophe, which happens every sort of year or so, and I lose a load of stuff. And but Reaper is good. I think it makes sense. It basically, if I can use it, it's well designed, is the way I think about software in general, because it's easy enough for me. So it kind of makes sense. It intrinsically kind of is easy to use. Yes, I use Reaper with some VSTs, as I kind of think that the older I get, the less I use sometimes, so that I'm not. I think you can get excited about delay or something, but I get quite excited about using like EQ and noise gates and stuff like that, just because they help to do a job, and
they're more like sort of good for fixing, and not that you can sort of. And I think being good at that job is like doing a good EQ on something is really quite important, isn't it? If you can get if you can get into that. Yes,
I suppose I do a lot of automating kind of EQs and stuff, like, because I'm left with this sort of not very well thought out kind of piece of source material, and then I just have to kind of
fix it,
sit there and fix it, and I spend all the time fixing things, really, which is very glamorous.
Yeah, I think when I first started recording, all I wanted to do was just use every effect, use every VST. I just had like 20 million VSTs on everything, and it was just mental, just silly. But as that's kind of what finding out how the software works and how you want to craft a sound. I used to just make loads of soundscapey stuff and just have like crazy delays over everything and just automate in silly bits, and it's a lot of fun. I do miss playing in a little studio environment, making stuff like that. But you are right. At the end, it's nice to be able to just kind of gently tweak it and make it more kind of a better sound. It's a better skill, really. So how over the years you've seen, as another question I ask a lot of people, over the years there's been a massive change in like how technology is used in music production and like with the selling and of MP3s and the move away from records and stuff. How has that changed affected you? Has that been a good thing for you, or has it kind of taken away CD sales and stuff? Or
I do sell some stuff. I'm always amazed when people, I don't really check I think I've not got the settings right on my Bandcamp or something. Maybe I don't get told, but sometimes occasionally I'll be suddenly realise that people have bought stuff digitally, and it always kind of amazes me that people will do that. And it's nice when people give you money, obviously, but I suppose I'm not one of these people that I'm not too militant about format, even though I'm a record collector with like embarrassing amounts of records. I suppose it is this. It's kind of a double-edged thing, isn't it? Because there's, you know, the whole kind of means of production or whatever of this industry has just kind of like just been sort of devastated by this technology. But on the other hand, it's just so easy to get kind of music into people's ears. Well, it is technically easy, whether you can actually persuade people to listen to it, or whether it I think I've got quite a sort of it's nice when when kind of art pays the bills or whatever, but I suppose I don't. For me, there's something kind of scary about trying to turn it into a career, or I'd feel a little bit like if it was the only thing I had, then I'd be putting a lot of pressure on the actual music itself, sort of thing. I quite like the idea that I can make it, and it doesn't really matter if it really did have to pay my gas bill. I think I'd be in trouble. So I kind of like it to let it breathe, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't quite know if that answers your question.
Well, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a different world that we live in these days with. But then, you know, I was going back to the thing of what I said about the sampler. I mean, I the idea that if you were in 1975 or something and you were in a band, and you know you literally have to kind of pool all your resources to book some studio time or something, and then, you know, send a demo to this, like, you know, the gods at a record label or whatever. It just, you know, I that's depressing to me, that thought, really. So I'm quite up for the democratization of kind of the opportunity of making music and disseminating it. I think that's pretty good, actually.
Yeah. It's nice to have no gatekeeper anymore, isn't it? It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because now everybody can do it. There's a sea of stuff, and so you just get lost in the sea of stuff. But before, there was a very limited entry, but maybe if you were lucky enough to be picked, you would get a slightly better situation. I don't know. It's been good. I think everyone I speak to has a very different sort of view on it, but most people are like, it's been beneficial for them.
Yeah. I think one thing about it is some people sort of like bemoan the fact that, you know, if it took them kind of 10 years to work out that the Velvet Underground were sort of at the end of the sort of cool spectrum or something, or whatever, or you only kind of got to hear about things in you know, because your mate's brother bought it from a specific record shop in Liverpool or something, you know.
Yeah.
And of course there's a bit of magic has been lost about the way that we kind of consume music because of things like that. You know, it doesn't have that kind of personal, it doesn't tie in with our personal history and all that stuff. But like, I'm often struck by meeting people that are like a lot younger than me or whatever, that because they've always grown, you know, they're internet natives or whatever, and they just have that, you know, they know everything about the Fall or whatever, you know, they're you know, or some New York scene that was like, I didn't find out until I was like in my 30s or something. It's you know, they're very clued up about music, and that is goes into when they make music, they don't just sort of, they have quite a sort of a nice overview of music, I think, and that that kind of actually benefits the stuff they do as well. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, I think there's. It's lovely. There's bits of it that I miss. There's no record. There's no like local record shop. I miss going and get rare stuff. I miss going up and like there being records on the wall that I go, oh, one day gonna get that or whatever.
Yeah.
And I miss that kind of like the whole ritual of getting it and taking it back and being the only one of my friends that might have it, and people coming over and you go like, check out this Rage Against the Machine record. It's got this B-side on it that no one's ever heard. Or do you know what I mean? That was really cool. But then the other side of it is that you can be a fan of something a million, like whatever, like thousands of miles away. You can be their biggest fan. You can find out everything about them. You can see every video. You can watch every live stream, and you can be connected to people in a different way that was so hard to to have at the time. So it is. I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? I think it's about how you. I think everyone's got a fair opportunity, and it's about how you use your energy to make sure you get a piece of the cake.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And the people that do a good job of it, there's nothing secret to what they're doing. This is clear as day, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know. Is there any music that you? I quite like to give people an opportunity to shine a light on any unsigned bands or anything that you like in your scene that you would like to sort of promote for other people.
Well, we talked about Ben.
Yeah.
He talked about me. But
the mutual,
I'd like to,
mutual pact.
Yeah, I think that's worth observing. I think he's doing something that, particularly the technical side of what he does. That's pretty innovative, I think, isn't it? How he's So, and I definitely think he needs to make a video for that song of his. That's the video game song.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it's called, but
up, down, left, right.
Up, down, left, right. Yeah. So there was a local band called Nervous Conditions who were amazing, but have split up. That's a real shame. There is still another young band called General Waste who are really good. There's been a bunch of Cambridge kind of based young bands, which is amazing because I've lived here a long time and we don't really do scenes in Cambridge. It's a funny place. Other than that, kind of my fellow travellers of the kind of Cambridge weirdy music scene, the Doozer, although they're not. Simon lives in Edinburgh now, so his stuff's certainly the last few albums. It's worth checking out. My friend Dave Nocheks, who does kind of very warped electronic music, sort of dance music, but dance music for often for a strange night out, I'd say. Who else? I think that's probably all.
It's one of those questions that you will immediately, when we finish,
will.
Yeah, okay. I've got all these. Yeah, it's hard to kind of think about, isn't it? Is there anything that you want to promote of yours?
You could mention I've got a Bandcamp, or I could mention that. I've got a thing in Bury, St Edmunds, some all-dayer in May. Not that I imagine that's going to boost ticket sales anytime soon for that, but I guess, I've got quite a few records for sale. Yeah. And they're all sort of, I think any of them are really kind of, they're not like it's not that you have to get the early stuff because the early stuff is the best stuff, or the latest stuff because it's the latest stuff. I think you can just kind of dive in anywhere.
Yeah.
With my stuff, I probably will have an album out by the summer.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
What are you doing at the minute? Are you sort of just constructing songs to potentially put on something?
Yeah, I've given there's a label that are up for releasing it, but between the two of us, or both sides, we've been quite busy. I've sort of given them an album's worth, but I want to give them kind of at least an album and a half to 2 albums worth, and then so that both of us can be satisfied that it's something that needs to be released, kind of thing. But it's finding the time when I literally have to send people out of the house to talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's quite easy, sort of thing. So yeah.
It's hard, isn't it?
And I have to swap that for, like, tomorrow I've got to kind of go out and freeze in the park or whatever. So
sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
The sacrifice is great.
Yeah, just putting that out there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so, around your music, do you do anything particularly to sort of cultivate a community? I mean, a lot of people that I've spoke to are either very hot on this or very not hot on it, and it's just a case of, like, do you engage with your audience in any particular way? Do you do, like, video updates and stuff like that? Is that something that you're interested in, or not really?
No, I'm quite crap at kind of my friend of mine had to make me have a Facebook page for Pete
Yeah.
And then he would have to kind of like update it, and I'm not very good. I kind of tell people on Facebook or on Twitter or on Instagram that I'm playing. I don't really have I don't really like the a message for the fans kind of way of communicating or whatever. I just I'm not trying to sort of build it into something. But having said that, I think it's good to let people know what you're up to for lots of people, and especially if people really are interested, then you're doing a service to kind of tell them what you're doing, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's difficult, and I know it can feel quite contrived and false doing it, and I'm in a band, and we do it, and sometimes I feel like writing these little messages or whatever but I think it's important to, if you it depends how much you want to promote your music and how much energy and time you've got for it, doesn't it? But you can kind of see the successful communities are the people that do a lot of that stuff, and just kind of chip away at it, like Thomas Truax with his like Wowtown stuff and all of that kind of it's a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think if I've got hopefully if I've got another record or something, I think I'll try and tie things together in a way that I've not done as much in the past. But I can't really. I don't know. I think sometimes if you're there taking what you do very seriously, it kind of starts to lose a bit of its appeal in some ways, doesn't it?
Yeah,
in a strange way.
Yeah. As soon as you make anything a job, it becomes work, and then fundamentally becomes unfun. Like I in the summer, our band is busy, and we do lots of gigs, and we play all over the place. And I can remember 6 years ago thinking, if I could do that, I would be in heaven. There would be nothing.
Yeah.
There would be nothing greater. I would have made my dream come true. And then I can actively remember weekends going like, I'm just done.
I know. That is my life, actually. I used to think that if I just had one little task to do that was about, that I needed to do for my, so-called music career every day, then, and I could just do that, and then it would have this self, or yes, the playing, I've toured, and I've played with musical heroes, and I've had, it kind of achieved a lot of things that I would never have believed if I'd been told, kind of, however many years ago. But yes, and on some kind of level, it just becomes normal sort of thing, or a pain in the arse sometimes. if it is sometimes to do with gigging or whatever,
It sounds so ungrateful, doesn't it? Because
it does.
It's like the human condition is so funny. So we so quickly get used to things, don't we? Like I'd go to gigs and I'd think, I had no expectations. If I turn up at a gig and they would give food to us, I would be like, "This is the greatest thing ever."
Yeah.
And then there's
I'm still like that with food, though. I mean, not because not because I'm a glutton or something, but it just doesn't so rarely happens in the UK and stuff, or if you go abroad and they're like, you've got get-in food, and all these yogurts and stuff, and you're like, wow!
Oh my God, I'm a king.
So if they give you food in this country, it still feels special.
Yeah. Have you got any stories of any fun gigs or anything?
I've done some strange. I had to perform in a tree once at a little festival in somewhere in Norfolk. I thought they asked me to do this. We had this idea of you performing in a tree, and I kind of imagined myself. There'd be like some sort of stark kind of tree on a kind of blasted landscape with me, like looking like Tom Waits or something, kind of like proclaiming like my kind of dark wisdom from this tree. But in the actuality, it was just a big leafy tree, and you only had to step back about like 15 feet or something, and there was just this sort of portentous voice coming from out of this like very door. It was just like utterly ludicrous. What else?
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I've played in some funny places. I played in the Atomium in Belgium, which is this enormous kind of crazy sculptural structure that's shaped in the shape of an atom. And it's like so you're basically there performing in a bit of this atom, this like hundreds and hundreds of feet off the ground, which was. In fact, that was a bit ludicrous as well, because I was playing at a gig that people could bring their kids to, so all the kids were at the front, and I'm there doing my kind of, I'm Pete, I'm kind of, I'm this this strange figure with something to tell you kind of thing, and the kids are just completely like, there was a balloon that they were like passing around kind of thing. I was like completely upstaged by a balloon, so. Yeah.
Children at gigs are the great grounder, aren't they? They really are. We played at a primary school, and it was like the headmaster's leaving do, and so we do a song. We do "Minnie the Moocher" by Cab Calloway, if you know it. And I had I had no crowd, just about 2 rows of children. Just all doing Heidi, Heidi, Hi. It was amazing. They were
wow.
They were just on it. It was so good. Yeah, they were good. But then if they didn't like a song, they just walk off, and you just
bye then.
Yeah, fickle.
Yeah.
I gave the greatest performance I've ever done, and then off they go.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing, absolutely amazing. So, is there how would you see yourself? What's your dream for your project? In say like the next 5 years, if you could have it be exactly what you wanted it to be?
I think I've got pretty modest ambitions for that. That would just be, well, for one thing, just having the time to bloody do it would be good. But I mean, in 5 years, that's realistic given the ages of my children. And I just, want to given that I've got some time, I'd hope to be able to sort of finish stuff for release in some form or another, and then have that kind of lead to, you know, the kind of modest kind of opportunities to perform and get it heard. Really, that's it. I don't really.
It's quite reasonable.
Yeah. It's. But you know, when you've got when you can barely kind of find 2 hours or something to kind of do it, it's all you want, really.
Yeah, I know for all of the members of our band, all of their partners, all have this constant battle. It's the battle of time, and it's like, you know, the sacrifice of having to give up your week. If we gig weekends, the dads have to give up, you know, the weekends, and they have to then make recompense on the Sundays after a really late night gig. Go and do some dadding, and it's hard, isn't it? It's really hard, and I suspect it gets harder and more selfish the older you get, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Certainly, it's not as you can. Yeah, it's difficult when you. Yeah, to do the late nights and the
early mornings,
the early mornings, the very early mornings.
I couldn't imagine it. I get in if I'm in bed by 3 or 4 o'clock, I've done well, and I couldn't do. Next day, I'm just a write off. That's it. I just have to just go into like, if I've got gigs the next day, I just go in a rolling cycle of like, wake up really late, go back to sleep, eat rubbish food, get up, a gig, and on it goes. Battle mode is what I call it.
Yeah, that's how to tour, I suppose, isn't it? But yeah,
it is hard. Have you are you hoping to do much gigging, like touring this year, or have you just got to feel it once?
No, it's probably just going to be like one-off gigs, unless something kind of comes out of the blue. But yeah, I guess you never really, if you can, you know, get a release out, you never really know what will happen from that. Sometimes I've had, you know, I've played with a band and they've said, "Oh, can you do some other dates with us?" And I end up doing 3 dates, you know, and so. But you know, I always say, like, what is a tour? Is it 3 days, 4 days? You know,
right.
You can call it a tour. If you're out of you know, Cambridge or whatever, you're on tour.
Yeah, I always think of a tour as being any amount of dates that you don't come home between. In my mind,
right.
And I've never done a tour. I've done 60, 70 gigs a year. I've never in my mind never toured. I've always come home, or I always go home the next day.
There's a lot to be said for going home, though.
Yeah, we're a big fan of Run Home. We do, like, we live in Cornwall and we do gigs up in London sometimes, and we never stay. We're always just drive there, drive back. It's back-breakingly hard, but
yeah, I can imagine.
Bed is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What this is probably my last question. What kind of inspired your look and persona on stage?
Ooh, I don't know really. I don't. Sometimes I make an effort to kind of have a look, I suppose, in that I do wear funny hats sometimes, or you know, I often put on sunglasses for certain tunes, or have a, you know, the odd item of clothing. Sometimes I just don't bother at all, and I just kind of, you know, wear what I've worn to work, so I don't know. So sometimes it's useful to get into different clothes to kind of like
get into character
yourself. Yeah, getting into a new thing. I think you know, it's a sort of, yeah, it's good for the. I always think of a gig as quite a sort of co-created thing as well between you and the audience. It's not just you sort of, you know, you have to kind of imagine that you're whatever it is that you're doing, it's only with with an audience. It's only an audience kind of letting you do it if it works, sort of thing. So you kind of rely on the audience to kind of believe in this thing that you're doing. So sometimes that helps if you're dressed up or whatever, because you're that sounds a bit strange.
I understand exactly what you mean. It's the suspense of disbelief, isn't it? It's the same thing we do when we go and watch a film. We go, I'm going to allow whoever to be Peter Pan, or whatever, and I'm going to believe that. I'm going to get involved in that little world. And by you being in character, you're meeting them more than halfway, aren't you? You're saying, this is like this is what you're gonna see. This is this experience, and this is kind of. I think that if you make some effort, you can, like you say, bridge that gap a little bit.
I suppose, but to add to the sort of persona-wise sort of thing, I suppose I was just telling my partner that I didn't think last night's gig had gone as well as some of the other ones I've done recently, but that I kind of gauge them in terms of like how I feel about them. So if I'm relaxed, I tend to just sort of talk and maybe not make jokes, but say things that end up being funny. And I like that. I like it when people are sort of enjoying themselves, I suppose. Maybe it's a good way of sort of selling this rather strange music to people. But I like humor, and I like the mixture of kind of, because I think some of what I sing about is quite sort of sad in some ways, or kind of expressing some kind of general human discontent or something. So I think if you've got that kind of edge of absurdity, and it's a good mix.
It lightens it, doesn't it?
It lightens it up.
It's
so
the sugar with the medicine.
So I like to kind of fuck about, and I don't really go with this sort of just getting up and looking cool thing. I like to make it quite goofy, and when things go wrong, I quite like that as well. I quite like it when people heckle me, and I enjoy that. I like it when we're all in this sort of crazy the wheels could fall off the car at any minute kind of thing. So I suppose maybe I'm just a sort of inherently kind of ludicrous person, I think. But it's not me creating it. It's sort of people just laughing, not with me but at me. But it's not consciously kind of
thought out and planned.
Yes, thought out and planned. Yes,
I think it's. I'm really sympathetic to the idea of having a persona on stage. For me, it was the non-performing part of me was so nervous to be on stage that I had to become somebody else. I have to like don the outfit, and then I go into the mindset of somebody who's not frightened to go up on stage, and not frightened to go and sing, and doesn't feel stupid dancing around like an idiot. And and it's like I don't think I necessarily created the persona so much, but I'm aware that there is definitely like a kind of a moment where I become who I'm going to be on stage, because it's fear, so much fear. I couldn't do it.
It's a funny thing, because sometimes you can, I'm often quite cocky on stage, and then sometimes it will kind of, I won't be in the zone for the gig, and then all of this sort of confidence just sort of can seep away. And that's it's not always something you can turn on, turn off. Maybe I rely too much on cider, I think. It's the other thing.
When I first joined the band I sing in, I used to lose my voice every gig, and I was told by somebody that brandy was like quite good to warm the throat. So I used to have a hip flask of brandy, and I would just drink the whole hip flask of brandy. And I'm a massive lightweight. I'm a massive lightweight. And by the end of the gig, it's only an hour and a half. I would just be steaming. I would just be steaming away. And yeah, a large part of it for me was that. But at some point, I had to stop doing it. I had to because there's gigs where I have to drive, so I couldn't do it then, and it just became this like. At some point, I had to transition from just having to go and do it straight, and it was just very surreal at first.
Yes, I keep meaning to experiment with doing it straight, but I never seem to get around to it. But
it's not good. It's not a nice feeling.
Yeah, I think I could rule the world if I could get up on stage without having at least a couple of beers.
Yeah.
But I've stopped. I think I've tried to stop drinking beer on stage because I've only comparatively recently realised that it is actually affecting my ability to sing.
Yeah.
And if you've got if you're sort of clearing your throat or whatever with cider or something, it's really bad. So I've started to drink water on stage.
Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. Try brandy. I might have just
tried brandy.
I might have just ruined your career in that move. I remember the pre-brandy
it was going that
days.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. It all comes back to that one a bit of advice. Yeah, it's for some reason it kind of all alcohol has a bad effect on your vocals, but brandy just for some reason warms your voice up. And port apparently is the only two you're allowed.
Well, that's weird. I had a miraculous experience with port once before a gig where but that was more sort of emotional. I think I was. It was like 2 a.m. in a very cold Dutch squat, and I hadn't slept for 36 hours or something, and I just couldn't believe that I was going to get up on stage and be any good. But somebody gave me some port, and it was like
the key.
Yes, now I can do it. Yeah.
Are there any gigs are there any places that you would like to play that you haven't? You've done like Glastonbury or anything?
I've never done Glastonbury. I'd like to play Glastonbury back in the sort of wild and woolly days. Actually, I've seen some great gigs in little tents.
Yeah. I was thinking you'd be excellent. I'd love to wander into some random place and see you up on stage. That'd be awesome. There's a lot of space for that, isn't there? There's a lot of space for little niche experiences. Some of my favourite memories of Glastonbury are like those types of places. Strolling.
I did. Our local free festival was Strawberry Fair, and one year I didn't get asked. I sort of semi-regularly get asked to play, but one year I didn't get asked, and I wandered around with this enormous tape recorder I've got. It's like it's like one of the holy grails of boombox collectors. It's a Sharp GF777. It's absolutely enormous, and I just wandered around all day, kind of performing to just anyone and everybody everywhere, and it was a really tough. It was good, but it showed me that when people say you're brave getting on stage, but on stage, you've got people who have actually paid to get in, and they're expecting somebody to get up on stage and kind of make a fool of themselves or whatever. But to do it to people who just random members of the public in their kind of normal environment, even though it was sort of a festival thing, it was quite full on.
That is quite brave, isn't it?
Yeah. There is some YouTube footage of that. If you search sort of Pete Strawberry Fair, you'll probably find some quite confrontational episodes.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds great. I like the idea of that. Yeah, I would love to do something like that at Glastonbury. Just rock up with my band, just pitch up somewhere, just get on it. Yeah, I would love to do Glastonbury. That's pretty high on my to-do list. There's a lot of we've been quite lucky in this country, really, because there's a lot of quite small boutique-y type festivals that are just ripe to go and play, really.
Yeah, I guess I need a bit more. That would be good to have a kind of, yeah, somebody who was on my side festival wise.
You do all your booking and stuff yourself, then you're not like got for a promoter or anything.
No, I mean
Not an agent.
I know. No, I haven't had. I had an agent briefly years ago, but I think she got too successful, and yeah. But no, I mean, they can be useful things, agents, I think. And but having said that, I guess if I was being booked up for months in advance, it would be kind of pretty disruptive to the rest of what I do right now. So yeah, I think I'm pinning that. That's going in the 5-year plan thing.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
really. Yeah.
That's fair enough. All right, Pete. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, and I'll leave some links so that people can kind of follow you and check your stuff out. And yeah, it's
Excellent.
great. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
This has been the Noise Filter. We'll see you again. Cheerio. Goodbye.